7:14 on a Monday. Mike is here. Monday's Minute Mechanic Moment. Mike Sisk. I'll get out in a minute.
Good morning.
Hey.
How's it going today?
Good. What do you think about the Washington National having almost the perfect game?
Man, Scherzer was close, wasn't he? And
Within a strike.
Yeah, and if you watch the
that batter stuck his elbow.
Oh, he stuck his elbow in there. But man, I'm not going to sit here and say I wouldn't have done the same thing. Man, they need to get somebody on base.
When you're batter number 27, you got to do something.
Yeah, man. You know it's time for
for a bruise.
Yeah. Well, he had on
he had
a guard on his elbow and all. You know, like I see some of the batters wear, and he leaned into that a little bit and got hit on the elbow. So they got a base runner out of it. Man, that was a great pitching performance by Scherzer. He's an impressive pitcher. You know, back whenever he was leaving the Tigers, the Cardinals were kind of sort of looking at him. I wish we could have landed him, but he's doing okay for Washington.
That would have been nice to have him on our side.
Well, especially now that Wainwright's out for the rest of the year.
But I tell you what, we're still battling on.
Yes. St. Louis Cardinals are, here we go with my sports take on that stuff. But the Cardinals have been impressive this year because they've lost Adam Wainwright, the best pitcher. They lost Matt Adams, their starting first baseman, and they don't have a whole lot of power as far as home runs, and he was about a third of it. Mm-hmm. He's out for the season.
Yep.
And then Matt Holliday goes down with an injury, and he's been out. He's on the 15-day DL. He should be coming off here.
He should be coming back by July 1.
And, even losing all these players, and there's more, that Jordan Walden, their middle setup guy for closer, he's out. I think maybe the rest of the year. They've lost some pretty good players, and they're still winning.
Where would we be if everybody was healthy?
Man, I don't know. Maybe worse, but they have really been playing good baseball, and the guys that they have brought in to fill in have done a pretty good job.
Yes, they have.
I know this weekend I watched them play in the Phillies, and there was some names that I didn't recognize. They had some minor league guys up, kind of giving them a run at it.
Well, when you're, 20? I'm looking at it now, 22 games above 500.
And about a 7-8 game lead on the next team, maybe. You can afford to do a little bit of that.
Yeah, we're 6 games ahead of Pittsburgh, 7 ahead of Chicago. We're 21 games above 500.
Man, the season's only a little bit more than a third over, but there's going to be a lot of people there. There's a lot of people had big, high hopes for the Chicago Cubs and all the money and the players and all that they've acquired this in the off season. And man, they started off pretty good, but all of a sudden now it seems like Chicago's headed the wrong way.
Well, there's always page 2, and that's after the All-Star break.
Yep.
That's what scares me about St. Louis being so far ahead of the pack.
Yeah,
It's like a race car in the first half of the race. You could blow a tire, throw a clutch, throw a rod. You never know. So let's hope that they keep banging.
A lot of times that, of course, the Major League Baseball season's in 2 halves, before and after the All-Star game, and many times it's a Jekyll and Hyde thing.
Yeah. Look at 2011. By September 1, I was predicting Philly and Detroit to be in the World Series. Might it be in Texas and St. Louis?
Yeah. And that was a good World Series.
It was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I've got to mention this. I was in the restaurant the other day on the square, and sitting there talking with a friend, and a guy walked in with a Cub shirt, and I said, I just had to say something. I said, that C stands for Cardinals, doesn't it? But that's the wrong color. He says, hey, no. He says, this is the Chicago Cubs, and we're above 500, and I'm happy.
Those Cubs fans are tough people. They
gotta be.
They have perseverance.
So what's going on at Minute Mechanic?
Oh, hot and busy. It's that time of year. Summer's here. Got a lot going on, and I was sitting up there this morning making up the schedule for this week, and it occurs to me, man, the 4th of July is just right around the corner. It's getting close.
Yeah. What is it? A week from Saturday?
Yeah. The 4th of July is upon us almost. Going to be a lot of people here. Going to be a lot of people on the road.
Mm-hmm. So, a couple of questions for this week. The good old serpentine belt. This one's got multiple cracks in the ribs.
Yeah, it'd probably be a great idea to replace it. Gates used to make a little gauge, and it had a window of about an inch long or so. And when you laid that on the belt, the wording on the gauge said if there's more than 3 cracks appear in that window, replace your belt. So if you've got more than 3 cracks in those ribs and about an inch long, then it's time to replace the thing. serpentine belts do not break that often. They really don't. I mean, I've been in this business since they introduced serpentine belts, and you don't see them breaking unless there's another issue somewhere else. You don't see them break very often at all. Of course, again, the downside to that is when that serpentine belt flies off of there,
it's all over now.
Yeah, it's time to pull over on the side of the road and get on the phone and look for some help, because most of these cars now, there are exceptions to the rule, but most cars, when the belt's off of it, you got no water pump, so your engine's going to overheat. You got no power steering, no alternator, no air conditioner. You got nothing. And
boy, the dashboard lights sure light up when it happens.
Yeah,
Bing,
all those.
bing, bing, bing.
You find out if your dashboard lights and alarms are working, and most generally they are. But the serpentine belts are a great idea for the most part. You know, I used to do this stuff back when we would have a car with 4 or 5 little V belts. And you remember all that stuff. Remember the match pairs, and all that for the alternator and air conditioner, maybe on some of the Chryslers. And
remember on the V8s,
Yep. And with all of those little V belts, I remember lots of times seeing them laying in the road.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You don't see too many serpentine belts laying in the road anymore.
No.
And if you will take just a little bit of care on them things, replace them when you see some cracks, get them off of there and get a new one put on. Many of them are dead easy to put on. Some of them are not, but they're not that expensive, especially considering the expense of sitting on the side of the road. They're just not that bad to do. And
if your serpentine belt has been on for say 100,000 miles, change it.
Yeah, absolutely. That belt has done a lot of work in that 100,000 miles, especially when you consider it, like, again, it's running
hot, cold.
Yes, running all those accessories, and it has done a lot of work in 100,000 miles. Put your new one on, don't worry about it. That way you don't have, and then while you're doing that, check the tensioner.
I'd replace it.
And we always try to spin the pulleys, like a idler pulley and stuff, and listen to see if you can hear a bearing noise. Many times you don't, sometimes you do. It'd be a good idea to do that while everything's already off. And we use Gates belts.
Yep.
We've not found any that's better.
Yep.
There may be others out there that are just as good, but I don't know of any that's better.
I trust the Gates belt.
Yeah, they're good stuff. And we don't have any trouble with them.
But though, regardless of the brand, I don't know, when you go into the issue of putting that belt on, I'd go the extra whatever it is. Some of the little tensioners can be expensive, $100 or better.
Yeah.
But, when you look at it, if you're going to be going from here to Chicago, or like me going to Nashville, or perhaps you're going farther, maybe to L.A. or New York, something like that, I'd put tensioner on them. I wouldn't risk it.
Yeah, sometimes when you're sitting there doing the job and you're working on your own vehicle and you see a little something here or there that could be done, and you kind of just pass on it, and man, I've been guilty of that. I for sure have. But then you get to thinking about it. If you're on a trip from here to the Rocky Mountains or something on vacation, man, it ain't worth sitting on the side of the interstate because you didn't want to put on a $100 part. And
you see with that spring, that tensioner is a heavy spring.
Yes.
And it's mounted directly to the engine block or a framework of the engine block, and there's very little ventilation down there. So, after a while, there's got to be a little bit of heat stress on that spring. Well,
there's fatigue to it.
Yeah.
And we do see tensioners with issues at times. We see more tensioner issues than we do belt issues. And it's a big old heavy coiled spring that applies the tension to the belt. And sometimes that looks like a big old wire that's coiled, and it breaks.
Yep.
And again, it's not something that happens every day, but you see it fairly often. Yeah. And they also will lose.
If you've ever had one break, you'll know.
Yeah, and also those tensioners, if they don't break, sometimes they lose some of their tension. So then you end up with that little belt chirp. Belts making noise, things like that you didn't have before. They don't hold the belt at the specified tension any longer, and it's a good idea to replace them.
Just somewhere on the belt tensioner, if I was around 125,000, I think I'd just go get one and put one on. So my transmission fluid hasn't been changed. It's somewhat dark and has kind of a funky smell. It's on a 2005 F-150 four-wheel drive.
Well, with it being a 2005,
10 years old.
10 years old, fairly good chance it may have 80 to 100,000 on it. And transmission fluid should be a nice red color. It is when it's new. So if it's dark, And if it's got a funky smell to it, sometimes maybe that's the burn smell you'll get in them. And be a good idea to bring that in. We'll drop the transmission pan down, change the filter that's inside of it, new gasket, put it back together, and then we'll hook up into your transmission cooler lines with our T-Tech machine, and we can flush all that old fluid out of the torque converter. Because when you drop a pan like on that F-150, you'll probably get between 4 and 5 quarts of fluid. There's another 8 or 10 that's still inside the transmission. So you've changed a third, and that's better than nothing for sure, absolutely. Yeah. But that's still not the best.
That T-Tech machine's impressive.
It is. It's impressive in its simplicity, and we've had it now for.
You've had it a long time.
15 years, I'm going to guess, and it is a great piece of equipment. Yeah. It really, really is. And when we do this, we get that new fluid in there and check it. Looks like a brand new transmission. It looks like it did when the car was newer. And again, transmission fluid is one of those things that people seem to forget about, and because it's not like oil where they're telling you to change it every 5,000 miles. A lot of cars now, they recommend changing it at 100,000. Well, man, it's easy to forget stuff in 100,000 miles, and maybe like our F-150 here, and it sneaks up on you, especially if you're out pulling a trailer. Guys pulling boats and pulling campers and things. Well, it increases the wear and the work that's been placed on that transmission fluid. So, yeah, on the F-150, I think it's time to change that stuff. Being an 05, it may very well require Mercon 5 fluid. I can't swear to that. I'd have to look on the dipstick. Make sure that when you get the right fluid back in it, don't put Dextron or regular Mercon in it. It takes a Mercon 5. That's a specific fluid that Ford has.
Certain blend for
it. Certain blend with friction modifiers and all the goodies that Ford thinks that transmission needs. And so it's always a great idea to do what the manufacturer says in that situation.
Now, if you're pulling a trailer with the four-wheel drive Ford F-150, then, that's considered severe duty.
Yes.
I'm sure that an F-154 would probably have a transmission cooler, an external cooler, or more modifications to handle.
Yeah. On the half-ton truck, sometimes it's a shot in the dark. If they have a trailering package on them, they're going to have an external cooler. Some of the...
Excuse me, I got to take that call real quick.
Go ahead, Dale. I'll keep talking.
Go ahead.
Some of the half-ton trucks that do not have a trailer package, they may or may not have an external transmission cooler, and the cooler is wholly contained inside the radiator. But like my truck has a trailering package, and it's got a pretty sizable transmission cooler that's out in front of the condenser. That helps keep that fluid a little bit cooler. People who trailer a lot with their vehicles, you need to shorten up the fluid change intervals on your transmission, and probably everything else as well. The wife and I went to Springfield this weekend, and I don't know how many trucks we met. Big 1-ton, 3/4-ton trucks, and they pulled trailers that were just huge, Yeah. So those guys like that, and the farmers that I'm seeing with the round bales on their trailer and all that stuff, and the cows, if you're doing that a lot, you need to shorten up your intervals for fluid changes on the automatics.
Down to the last minute before we go to break, and I'll introduce the phone call real quick. Mark Berlin, editor of the State of the American Mind, is going to be visiting with us at the second half of the program after Mike gets finished here. And stick around for that. So, Men Mechanics located Highway 201 North, across the Salvation Army, all major brands of motor oils, top brand filters.
Yes. It's going to be a busy week for us. There's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. We're going to have a lot of people in there wanting to get ready to leave for the 4th of July. Give me a call. We'll get you in and do it. If you got, basic auto repair maintenance questions, call me. I'll try my best to answer. Some of these questions are very, very hard to answer without seeing a vehicle sitting there, but I'll give it my best shot.
Now, you will be closed on July 3rd.
Yes.
So that gives us Monday through Friday this week and Monday through Thursday, perhaps?
Yes, of next week. Yeah, we'll be closed on the 3rd of July, and we'll be back on Monday. Yep. And I'm sitting here daydreaming, trying to look at my calendar in my head.
When there's one sitting right there.
Oh, thank you, Dale.
Minute Mechanics located Highway 201 North, across the Salvation Army. Give Mike and the gang a call, 425 888-878-3135. They look forward to seeing you and serving you. Time for the news coming up here in just a few minutes. Mark Berlin, writer and editor of The State of the American Mind, will be our guest. Stick around. Be right back.